and welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Chloe Belchamber, and on today's episode, I'm direct messaging stylist turned Pinterest strategist Rachel Waring. We'll be discussing why Pinterest is an underrated tool for marketing and the best ways brands can utilize the platform in their favor. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Where are you joining us from today?
I am from home, obviously, and I am in East London.
Oh, lovely. Is it nice and sunny up where you are today?
It's a lovely day, actually. Yeah, we had a little walk this morning, so yes, it is a very nice April day.
How exciting. Let's kick off the interview with a round of quick-fire questions. Are you ready to answer these burning cues?
Yes, I'm a little bit nervous, but go for it. Hit me.
All right, let's jump into it. My first question is a cafe date or picnic date?
Ooh, picnic date.
Interior design or fashion design?
Interiors, definitely.
Ooh, summer or winter?
Oh, autumn. I know that wasn't an answer, but I can't pick those two. Autumn. I cheated.
I love that. I love we make up our own responses. Physical vision board or a virtual Pinterest board?
Oh, that is difficult. I'm going to say, because of what I'm here to talk about, I will say Pinterest, but I do also love a physical vision board as well.
Love that. Champagne or rosé?
Champagne.
Always. Give up snacking or give up television?
Oh, give up snacking.
Ooh.
Reluctantly.
Casual Fridays or bring your pet to work day?
Bring your pet to work day, because that is my life.
Canva or Photoshop?
Canva, as of recently. It's really stepped up its game.
We do. We love Canva over here. Video content or graphic content?
Video. Love video content.
And finally, plants or pets?
Pets. 100%.
Some great answers there.
I feel like I'm so indecisive anyway. That's like that kind of round. I was like, I'm going to find that really hard.
Right, well, let's jump straight into the interview. You started your career as a wedding stylist and soon turned your creative flair into helping others grow their businesses through Pinterest. So I want to know, when did you first get into Pinterest marketing?
Yeah, so as you said, I was started out as a wedding stylist. So really, in terms of using Pinterest, it was from building my own business. Like Pinterest was absolutely instrumental in growing my wedding business. So it was a few years in working in weddings, and actually I was really quite reliant on Etsy. So I started my wedding business on Etsy. I was selling wedding stationery, and I love Etsy. I think it's an amazing tool for handmade business owners. But I was really aware that I wanted a bit more autonomy in my business. I wanted to grow a platform that was mine. I wanted more website traffic to my website rather than something that's owned by someone else. So Pinterest seemed like a really good fit because I knew that it was good for weddings. So I just put a bit of sort of effort and experimentation in, and it actually ended up bringing me 70% of my website traffic in the end. So that's sort of where I was like, wow, Pinterest is amazing. I want to share this. Like, yeah, I'm a big fan.
I love that. So, I mean, aside from all the business it brings, what do you love most about Pinterest?
Yeah, so I think I was thinking about this, and like one of the things I would say is I think it's amazing for introducing yourself to new customers, which I think is like, in terms of marketing, that's why I love it. But actually, as a platform, something that I've noticed, and this is like something that they're really leaning into recently, is that it's a platform for positivity. And it's actually, they really talk about that a lot. And they've just brought out a new, I saw it the other day, it's super new. When you create a pin, you have to sign a creator agreement. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, it's like almost like a sort of promise, basically, that what you're going to be putting on the platform is positive and it's going to be sort of enriching people's lives. And I really think that that is where the strength lies. And I think that's why Pinterest is having a little bit of a renaissance at the moment, because people really want that positivity online. So I think that's why I really enjoy it as a user as well as a marketer.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the great things about Pinterest as well is it's very purpose driven. I think a lot of us can kind of scroll through Instagram just kind of aimlessly, but Pinterest, you're going there with a purpose to find inspiration or, DIY, that kind of thing. So I think that's a really great thing about the platform as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a place where people go to plan their ideal life. It's not somewhere where people go to compare themselves to others. It's like, it's more self-focused. People are there to like plan their ideal future, that is only a positive thing, really. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, great. Well, speaking of, I think there are so many other platforms out there like Instagram that I think Pinterest has almost become this underrated tool for marketing. But why do you think it's so great for businesses to be on?
Yeah, so as I sort of briefly mentioned, for me, it is one of the best places to introduce yourself to new people. So there's a stat that it's 97% of searches on Pinterest are unbranded. So that basically means that when people are searching, they know what they're looking for, but they don't know who they're looking for it from yet. So they don't know the brand. So that's why it's such an amazing place to introduce yourself to these new people. And it's like a gateway into people learning more about you. And I think that sometimes we get really, really stuck in these places where, we're looking for followers and we're chatting to our followers. But with Pinterest, it's about getting all of these new eyes on your business. It's a really great tool for that, like sort of top of funnel, if you want to be like marketing jargony about it. But yeah, just like introducing yourself to new people. It's brilliant for that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's this other kind of misconception that Pinterest is very for brands that have these beautiful images and, you can only use it if you're creating these aesthetic and like bespoke design, that kind of thing, which I guess kind of ties into maybe people also think that it's purely a product-based platform. Like if you're selling products and you take these beautiful product photos, this is the platform for you. So I want to know, how can service-based businesses jump on board?
Yeah, so definitely this is one of the top questions that I get asked from people who are like interested in Pinterest, but that was fun to say. But they sort of think like, is it really? I thought it was just for like recipes or like craft projects or home decor, which, it's great for those things. It's kind of a no-brainer for those types of businesses. But Pinterest, especially for service-based businesses, there's a lot of trending stuff on there at the moment about wellness, for example, is huge on Pinterest at the moment. Small business advice is absolutely huge. And I think that the main question to ask yourself is like, is my ideal customer on Pinterest? Rather than like, are businesses like me on there? Is my ideal customer there? And if the answer to that is yes, then it's a good place to be. And, in terms of how service-based businesses can get on board with it, it's just about thinking about how you're providing value and how you can create pins that tell people you have value to give, and how, creating pins that will direct people to your website. Like blog posts are a great example of this. If you've got blog posts as part of your service-based business, creating pins that can tell people about your blog post and point people in that direction, it's such a great way of building traffic. So yeah, it's definitely not just for classically visual businesses.
Yeah, I love that. So I guess with all of that in mind and, with all brands listening with all ears now, what are the best practices for using this platform?
Yes, so that it's actually in a real state of flux at the moment on Pinterest. Like things have changed this year quite a lot. So some of these things, if you've heard anything about Pinterest before, you might be like, oh, that's different from what I've heard before. So one of the first things is Pinterest is all about fresh content now. So what that basically means is a new image, like a new pin that they've never seen before. So that doesn't mean that it has to be a new product or a new service page or a new blog post. It can be the same URL. It just needs to be a new image. And also, obviously, new content, new URLs, new products, that also does really well as well. So that's the first thing, is that I think in Pinterest days of yore, it used to be common practice to duplicate your own work a lot and just sort of recycle stuff over and over again with the same images. But now they really want to keep things fresh on the platform. So if every week you can add new fresh content onto Pinterest, you're going to get favored on the smart feed or the Pinterest algorithm. So that's the first thing. Then there's a few sort of pin best practices that are definitely worth keeping in mind. The first one, which is probably the most famous, is that vertical images or portrait images perform way better than square or horizontal. So it's always worth, if you've got images that aren't vertical or portrait, repurposing them on something like Canva, or putting them into a collage or something. It's always worth optimizing them in that way. And then the final sort of most important starting best practice is to remember that it's a search engine. Like, it's way closer to Google than it is to Instagram. So just think like your ideal customers, think like a searcher, and think like, what words are they using to find my work? And that's what's really, really going to move the needle on Pinterest.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you suggest then, I know maybe a lot of people or brands at the moment are sharing directly from, say, Instagram through Instagram share feature. Is
Yeah.
that effective, or is it best to create a brand new pin with the link to your website or to your Instagram, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where sharing from Instagram is better than doing nothing. Like, you know, if you're not going to have time to do the optimized pin, you might as well share from Instagram. But in an ideal world, if we had unlimited time, it would be preferable to make an optimized pin. Like, if you had an Instagram graphic that was square and you could just pop it into Canva and turn it into a pin template, that's quite relatively quick to do. So that's actually probably a better way of repurposing that content rather than just direct sharing it. So yeah, in an ideal world, yes, but don't let it stop you pinning at all. Because I know sometimes people are like, I haven't got time to do that. So it stops them doing anything.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get into the marketing side a little bit. Can you talk us through Pinterest ads and how they work?
Yeah, so the really great thing about Pinterest is it's still a really, really great place to get organic traffic. So even though Pinterest was my biggest traffic driver, I've literally never paid for ads still. Like, I really haven't delved into ads that much at all. And I think that it's not to say that it's not a brilliant place to advertise. I think it's like 100% in my plan. And it's actually still quite, I believe, I think it's still quite competitive pricing. I think it's still quite cheap for what you get in comparison to other ad platforms. So the one thing that's really important to know about ads is basically what works in your organic Pinterest strategy will work for ads. So what I usually recommend, probably because I'm really pro the organic strategy route, is to really work out your organic strategy first and have a go with that, see what performs well, and then you can start to promote those pins because you know that there's an interest for them and you know that people are searching for them, rather than just sort of diving straight in. But yeah, I know that they've got some really, really great targeting. They're really worth having a go with, but I think after you've done some organic strategy to get yourself into it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess whether you're, driving through organic posting or you want to have a look at the paid side, how can businesses measure the success of their marketing efforts on Pinterest?
Yeah, so if you have a business account on Pinterest, which I 100% recommend before you start pinning, and you literally just do that through your settings, you can convert your current profile to a business account, or you can start a new one. But once you've done that and you have claimed your website, which is another really important step, then you will get access to the Pinterest analytics, and you can then see, like, the most sort of obvious number that they put at the top of your profile is your monthly views. And I think sometimes people get really, really fixated on monthly views because it's like the most prominent number. But actually what that means is it's basically the number of impressions that your pins are getting every month. So obviously you can't get anything else unless you get impressions. So it's a good first step. But the metrics that I really care about are saves, which is people obviously saving your pins to their boards. And that helps kind of show your pins to more people, because every time someone saves it, it gets shown to their followers as well. And then most importantly, obviously there's engagement as well, like people engaging with your pins is super important. And with Pinterest, engagement is slightly different. It's not, you can comment, but it's not quite the same as Instagram. Like it's not as done. But engagements would mean people saving, people clicking on it, like basically people interacting in any way. But for me, the most important metric, if you're trying to get more website traffic, is what's called outbound clicks, which is basically people clicking through from your pin to a link, because every pin, unless it's story pins, links to an outside link that you set. So that's what I keep an eye on, because that for me is what's going to give me results in my business.
Okay, beautiful. And tell me a little bit about story pins that you just mentioned there. Is that a new feature or?
Yes. So I'm not sure if everyone has them in the UK yet. They're still rolling out. So some people have early access, and they are Pinterest's newest feature. They're really making a big deal of them at the moment, rightly so. I think they're amazing. So they are, I guess, a similar format to Instagram stories in a way, but they don't disappear. So that's the key. They are evergreen, and one story pin can be made up of multiple, they call them different things, slides, panels, pages. They seem to use them all interchangeably, but basically one pin can be made up of, 5-10 pages up to 20 pages long, and the idea of them is basically to tell a story. So it could be a DIY with a sort of beginning, middle and end. It could be a frequently asked questions if you're a service-based business. I've done some that are like 5 ways to get more clicks on your pins, and then each slide will be a tip. So that's kind of how they work. They're almost kind of like little presentations, I guess, in a way, little stories. They're searchable. The main difference with them is, like I mentioned, they don't include an outbound link. So the call to action that Pinterest are really pushing for them is to follow the creator at the end. So when you look at them on mobile, they have an auto-populated follow page, and you can also mention yourself as well to sort of say, follow me. And this is why I think they're really, really interesting, because there's always been the capability to follow on Pinterest, but it's just not really ever been that important. Like it's not really been classic user behavior. And now they really seem to be pushing users to connect with creators rather than just ideas, which is a big move in Pinterest marketing. Like that's quite different. So that's why I think they're really exciting. They also get a lot of traction quite quickly in comparison to normal pins. So yeah, they're really fun. I'm enjoying them a lot.
I mean, I'm pretty much sold on Pinterest already, and we've only been talking for 20 minutes. But do you think there are any advantages to using Pinterest, say, over other advertising platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I think it's just a different part of your strategy, I think. Like in terms of, I mean, especially on the sort of organic side, I would see social media a lot of the time as more of a nurture space, and with Pinterest, like we were saying before, it's much more about your like finding new people. So there's the advantages. It's more that it's not like an either or thing. I just think it fulfills a different part of your strategy, and I think, you know, in terms of the comparison, to go back to the positive platform space, I know that a lot of when they chat about ads, they talk about the sort of frame of mind that people are in on Pinterest, and also the fact that people come to plan. They come to Pinterest really early as well. So if they're planning any sort of life event, they tend to come quite early, which is why it's a great place to sort of get in there quite early. And I usually use an analogy of like a party. So with somewhere like Facebook, a lot of the time, you're either looking at someone's photos of a party they've just had, or you're kind of looking at them having a party and you're sort of looking on and you're looking at what's happened. But Pinterest, you go to plan the party, and that's the difference. Like, it's not about comparing, it's about planning your own thing.
Absolutely. There's a great graphic going around, doing the rounds online at the moment about, you know, comparing the different platforms. And it's like,
yeah,
Instagram is, look at this beautiful coffee I just had. And Facebook's like, I'm having a coffee at this place. But then Pinterest is like, this is how to make that beautiful coffee. Like,
yeah,
it's interesting how all the different platforms kind of, they are the different stages of your business or like things you want to do. So I think that's a really great point to make.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you talking about, the graphic that's going around, that reminded me of a graphic that weirdly, it was actually my most popular Instagram post, but we'll ignore that. But it was basically the amount of time that your posts last on each platform. And the other benefit of Pinterest is how long your posts last. Like, your pins can bring you traffic for years to come. Like, even though my wedding business is actually closed now, I've still got that account open, mainly just as a sort of experiment to see what's going on. And my most popular pins are from 2018, 2019, and they're still bringing me traffic. So that's something that I think not many people realize, is that how evergreen they are, which is makes doing the work a little bit less challenging, I think, because you think, this is going to last me for ages, finally.
Definitely. I love that. I want to move on to the fun stuff now. And obviously, yes, we've chatted a little bit about dimensions and sizing of pins, but what is the best way to make your pins visually stand out, do you think? What are your top tips?
Yes. So I think something that can't be ignored on Pinterest at the moment is video content. So video pins are outperforming standard pins by loads. There is a stat, I can't quite remember it, I won't butcher it, but they're really, really, I think 1 billion videos are watched on Pinterest like every month or something. I'm terrible at remembering numbers like this, but there's a lot basically. And conversely, not that many people are using them, like in terms of how many are being watched and how many marketers are using them. So definitely video content, whether that's in your story pins if you have them, or just your standard pins. And also something that helps engagement and definitely helps your pins get more clicks is including some text on your pins. So including some context of what they're about, including a call to action to get people to click through. That's definitely proven. I think one of the steps that is often the final step to getting results out of Pinterest is actually getting people to click on your pins. It's all very well getting views, but if people aren't clicking on them, then it's not really going to do much for you. So thinking about what you can include on your pin to entice the viewer to click on it, that will really start to have your pins not only stand out, but be seen by more people and be interacted with more people.
Definitely. So how important then is captioning your, like, I think when we think of Pinterest, we think of the one image that we post, and we kind of wash our hands of it. But I know you mentioned that Pinterest is like this massive search engine. So is captioning important, or? Yeah,
so I usually compare it to, so it takes me writing is a challenge for me, basically. Like, I'm great with the visual stuff. Writing is one of my sort of struggles. And when I write an Instagram caption, I could faff around with it for half an hour easily. But with a Pinterest description, which is their sort of captions, they're really, really important, but they're not important in the same way. So they're important for the search engine. So definitely don't leave them blank, because then you're missing out on a lot of search opportunity. But people can see them. People, you have to write in the mind frame of people will read them. So you want to write them in normal sentences. You don't want to keyword stuff. But it's important. What's more important than, telling a story or anything like that is typing in keywords that your ideal customers will be using, and just thinking about, and basically you can use this advice for anywhere you put text on Pinterest. What is your ideal customer searching, and how can you be found through that copy? So that's more the mind frame of the captioning, rather than the quality of the copy. It's more keywords and making sure that it's searchable.
Definitely. Okay, so now I guess we have kind of the base work. If anyone wants to go and create some pins, you now kind of have a little understanding. But if they want a bit of inspiration, what are some of the best examples you've seen of brands utilizing Pinterest?
Yes, this is fun. So, one of the examples that Pinterest themselves use all the time, and they share a lot of their work, is made.com. So they are huge on Pinterest. They always use them as examples for both paid ads and organic reach. So they do really well. Who else? Joe Malone is quite big on Pinterest. John Lewis as well. Also, the more sort of content-based big brands like Tastemade, Tasty, that sort of thing. Their content is really, I like to look at their content for video pins, because they obviously, with those bite-size watchable recipe videos, that sort of thing works really, really well on Pinterest. So yeah, that's the sort of vibe. There's so many, and I think that if you want to find people in your niche, it's always worth having a search in the search bar around your niche to see what the big brands are. I've actually also, on my Pinterest account, I've got a public board called, I need to remember it, Creative Pin Designs. And in that, that's where I usually save all of my examples of great pins that I see, because it's always useful. Whenever I see a really good pin, I'm like, oops, yes, I'll save that to look at later. So yeah, if anyone wants to have a sneaky look, I've got lots of examples on there.
Yes, and I guess that's like one of the great things. Like, it's all well and good talking about creating pins and like putting pins out there, but as a brand or a social media manager, you can also pin, do the occasional pin of a design that you really like as inspiration as well. So it works both ways, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's now kind of recent Pinterest. It's definitely moved to a space where they're more interested in seeing your work. Like, they really love your fresh content, but it's like when it has another purpose, like saving for other people, it's not as important as it used to be. It's now sort of like a neutral activity, if that makes sense. Whereas it used to be like you should pin both. But yeah, it's a great place for that as well. Like, it's good for lots of areas.
Well, we've talked a little bit about a few new features that Pinterest has introduced recently, but I want to know, are there any features or updates that you'd love to see Pinterest incorporate in the future that they haven't already?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I think would be really, really useful, and you can actually do this with ads, but I think what would be great as a user is to be able to search with your location in mind without having to use keywords. So if you're shopping, obviously, I don't know if you've seen, but there's the shop feature now on Pinterest, so you can filter your results between just the standard results and shopping pins, which is great. But what I would love as a user is I would love to be able to say, okay, I want to see the shopping pins, but I want to see the shopping pins in London or in the UK. I think that would be really cool. There are ways to do, if you're on the flip side, if you're trying to market yourself location wise, you can obviously get around that by using location based keywords or using your location targeting in ads. But I think as a user, it would be so cool to be able to search by location. So you never know, hopefully.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, Pinterest, if you're listening.
Yeah. My request. Thank you very much.
Well, my final question for you is, if there's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this episode, what would it be?
So I think not to be intimidated by Pinterest as like, oh, I don't have time to do another thing. And I think that in the past, the reason why people have left Pinterest on the table is because there's a lot out there about having to do a lot of volume on Pinterest. Like a few years ago, to get any traction on Pinterest, you did have to pin quite a few pins per day, like in the tens, 10 pins, 20 pins, 30 pins a day. And now that's simply not the case. You could get a lot out of Pinterest. If you're optimizing everything really well, you're creating inspiring content, you could pin one pin a day and get some results from it. So I think the main takeaway is don't be intimidated by the workload and just give it a go with however much you can manage, and you might get addicted because it's really fun.
Amazing. Well, that is all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for joining me, Rachel.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was really fun.
Of course. Now, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so my website is rachelemmawaring.com, and Waring is spelled Waring. And then I'm basically Rachel Emma Waring everywhere else. So that's quite easy. And I have a podcast that I co-host with my pal Ellie, and it's called The Business Proposal.
Amazing. Definitely go and check Rachel out on all her platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you're listening on Spotify. We would love to hear what you thought of today's interview, so make sure you reach out on social media and let us know what you thought. Do you use Pinterest? Do you love it? Are you addicted? We'd love to know. We've been Giraffe Social Media. You've been amazing. We'll see you next time.